Welcome, everybody, to the Synapse Philosophy Group. I'm your host, Dr. Haig, John, and we are in D.D. Palmer's 1910 book, The Chiropractor's Adjuster, and we're on page 495. I guarantee halfway through the page, and I guarantee you we've probably gone farther than 99% of the chiropractors have ever read in this book. And it's exciting because we're on D.D. Palmer's chapter called Innate. And this is an extremely important chapter. Not only did we found innate adjusting workshops and newborn adjusting from D.D. Palmer's work, mostly of this chapter, it sets the foundation for the spiritual side of the philosophy of chiropractic. So I'm going to start reading, but first, before I start, I just want to say I had an awesome podcast today with Simon Senzon. And we talked about philosophy, chiropractic, history, the timeline of innate even, and where it's gone, where it has come from, and the split from the healing portion to the spiritual portion, and why we have that dichotomy in reality. So we had a really, really great podcast. We're going to edit it now. And so you guys will have it very, very soon. That's our interviews podcast. And I want everybody on this podcast to come in and join me one day too. I'll send you all a link. All right.
Great.
Okay. We're going to start. It starts at all organized living beings. Okay. All organized living beings are endowed with innervation, nutrition, digestion, motility, sensation, assimilation, absorption, circulation, transduction, diffusion, osmosis, calorification, calorification, that's a tough one, secretion, excretion, respiration, reproduction, and repairment. Whew. Okay, where's Dee going? All of these are under the control of and are managed by innate. The functions which perform all these acts may be modified, increased, or decreased by the alteration of tissue. Such modifications need mechanical adjusting. Drugs may stimulate or restrain functions for a time, but they cannot change the position of tissue, or if so, it is accomplished as an antidote, a poison which draws vertebra into the axial alignment, as snake bites. See the index. We should read that index. We'll get to that. Chemical analysis or combinations are out of the question, for they cannot be considered in the realm of living tissue. All right. Anybody have any clarity on that? Want to talk about it?
Yeah, the line, it says, all these are under the control of and are managed by innate. The functions perform all of these may be modified, increased, or decreased by alterations in the tissue. And the big line there is such modifications need mechanical adjusting, which is what we do.
Yeah.
That is the core of chiropractic right then and there.
Now, if we've talked about this, he doesn't talk so much subluxation yet. He hasn't really talked about adjusting so much yet. Now we're getting to, okay, we need a mechanical input to change the tissue. You can't take a drug to change the tissue. You can't eat a pill and expect a vertebra to go back in place. You know, if my atlas is subluxated, there ain't no pill to swallow. You know, I'm going to see Barry Hobbs. All right.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy for him is that a drug is like a snake bite.
Yeah.
And your body reacts to a snake bite with a spasm, which may draw bone into place. It does the same thing when you take a drug. It's the analogy is that it's a poison.
You know, I tell the people every day, a mechanical problem is going to take a mechanical solution. There's a cause and effect. You know, no chemical thing is going to do that. You know, what I hear there that you guys are talking about is adaptability. In today's word, the response of the tissue. And for those just tuning in, we're reading D.D. Palmer. However, for the Green Book people and most chiropractors who know, if you were to listen to that and all the details that he mentioned, excretion and this and that, you would think it's B.J. Palmer and the clinic controlled research. And they studied all these things, but it was his father, D.D. Palmer, the founder. This is great.
Said it first. That's it.
And then again, it goes back. He was one of the most learned men in human physiology, let alone the vertebral column. Okay. He studied every single thing he could, just like any medic, and probably 10 times more. So, yeah, absolutely. All right. At birth, there is a transition from maternal innate to that of the infant. In the mother, I better mark this page. I think I might have to put this in the slideshow. Okay. 490, what is that? 495?
495.
495. That's a good one. Bottom. All right. At birth is a transition from maternal innate to that of the infant. If the mother, in the mother, the innate of the infant began as a parasite and continued to prey upon its host until adopted. That's funny. As a parasite, it fastened itself to the walls of the uterus. The intelligence directing it thus is from the spermatozoid to the male. Of the male. I have mine's a typo here, actually.
Yeah, it's got a little mistype in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't print
Spermatozoid of the male. From its host, it draws nourishment until it is cared for as her own. As an infant, it becomes self-existent. Then he or she, we don't use that term anymore, then, no longer depends upon another for the performance of vital function. BJ goes into this too about when does really innate begin. And this is where he said when that sperm meets the egg, then, innate is on the job at that point. It's using the mother. And yes, the best way to describe that is, like a parasite. But very interesting. What do you guys think? Go ahead.
I listened to Sigafus today on the way to work, which I always do on the way to work. And he talked about the power innate is always there. And we violate those laws. And the early 20 Palmers used to talk about violating natural laws innate through the nervous system, through the body. And this is D.D. Palmer talking about violating these laws.
That's right. That's right.
It says here, there is an innate in the infant, but it is also parasitic to the mother while it's in utero. And at that moment of birth, it separates and becomes totally independent. But it's
I think that parasitic thing, I vision it as it can't be released. It's within. Innate's attached there. Now innate's attached. It's eternal. It's not going to go away. I looked at that as like a descriptor, not as like in a bad thing in a way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That was the best description and analogy to give us a good, concept in our mind that it needs that uterus to nourish it, is what he says at the last line at the bottom, until it can run on its own. And, as an infant, it becomes self-existent. It no longer depend on another for the performance of vital functions. It still depends on the other for nourishment. Very, very true. But the innate is beginning at that point. That's where I see D.D. Palmer talking about where innate begins. BJ mentioned that. And I remember with Dr. Clarence Jensen, he was my upper cervical, my toggle mentor that was at Clearview with BJ. And, he was a very religious man. And we talked about this. He said BJ would, innate really begins after birth, not at conception, because then that baby is wholly on its own innate intelligence. And I remember us having that discussion. He showed me the references. I see it much more as DD, okay, as we're seeing it from that moment of conception. So if you guys have references in that, well, look them up, because I think that's very interesting. But that's what he talked about. I remember having the conversation with him about that and BJ Palmer and when innate begins in the individual. We'll see.
I would see that as the educated part. Like we finally realize we have a consciousness. We know who we are. We're human. And Dee Dee talks about physiologically, there's that innate wisdom from there, conception, creation, transmission, expression, safety pin, continued, right? Cellulosis goes. And this internal innate, the power is always there. We know it physically through chiropractic and what we should do. However, we also know what we should do spiritually and chemically as well. All these other things, the power is always there. We just don't tap into it. And Dee Dee lays this out there. It's infant, and then you can mature it and make it grow as you please.
Yeah. All right. There is a radical change at birth. The functions are modified and substituted by others, which are suitable for its future environment. This exchange is made with the first breath of life. Okay, so that's the first breath of life. Innate makes this essential alteration as readily as thou it was an ordinary circumstance. I think that should be though. I was thinking we're talking in thous and thous.
No, there's no you in mine. It just says as though an ordinary circumstance.
Yeah, okay. THO is how he has it written. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we know where his son gets it from.
That's right.
I'm going to read that again because it's important. Innate makes this essential alteration as readily as readily as it was an ordinary circumstance. From that moment until the close of life, all the functions are performed in a normal manner, providing the functional channels are not interfered with. Being conversant with these facts, it becomes our duty to care for and keep this structure of bodily tissue in a normal condition.
Bada bing.
What he's saying is take care of yourself, right? You need to keep it in a normal
he's
condition.
Saying it's our job to help that happen. He's talking to the chiropractors there. He's saying it's our job to be conversant with these facts, and it's our duty to care for and keep the structure of the body tissue in normal condition. That's our job, is to help do that.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. I love that. We need more of that in chiropractic right now. Just people, we need a mission. This profession needs to bring a mission back to the students in chiropractic by far.
And this also goes back to what you were saying a minute ago, Haig, because it says, the exchange is made at the first breath of life. That innate was there, but the innate in this individual, the new baby, the infant, that in that moment, innate makes the essential alteration as readily as though it's ordinary circumstance. It happens all the time because innate is eternal and has done this before and works with the new innate and new educated that's in this body, the new body, and all the functions are performed in a normal manner, providing the functional channels are not interfered with. And then he says, but we have to make sure that happens. That's part of what we need to do.
Yeah. And that first breath of life, the physiology changes now. And we're separated from the placenta. And we're out on our own. And the physiology changes. You can't read that in a book. That's spirit on the job. Right? Barry, you have something?
Comments like this and the responsibility, and Alan repeated it, our duty, makes you think of BJ Palmer in his later years that talks about guarding our sacred trust. Same power, our duty. Beautiful.
I had so much fun. I was thinking about reading our masterpiece. It was so great reading BJ's last writing and the passion coming from BJ of just, this is the last handoff. Take it. I've done everything I could for you. It's up to you. Here you go. And, I just feel blessed to have all read it together. We had such a good time reading it, but I thought about reading that today. It was really, really good. All right, I'm going to continue, okay? The education of innate has been continuous since the existence of the first vertebrate. that of education during its lifetime. The education of innate has been natural, cosmical, cosmical. That of innate, educated, is more or less fictitious and assiduous. We have to look that one up.
I got that.
Go ahead. You did?
Yeah, I did.
Jake Jones is here.
Assiduous means having been added to or from something non-essential or separate.
Interesting. Okay. So from fictitious and non-essential, is that right?
Yeah.
Jake Jones, thanks for joining us, man. Good to have you back on. Because of this difference in acquiring an education, these two thinking entities often differ greatly. So he's talking about the difference of innate and educated, differing greatly. What do you think he means there? He's going to explain it. How do they differ greatly? Educated, we want to go and, chase the next shiny thing. And our spirit is saying, look, we got to make some new liver cells. You got to, like, your toenails are growing,
Well, it says that innate has accumulated knowledge over time and knows and is all knowing, if you will. And that educated is that its knowledge is innate's knowledge is cosmical, it's natural, and that educated is more or less fictitious and accepts stuff that is non-essential and separate. It catch can. What's going on now in a body is what educated knows and contributes to innate. That this is how this body's adapting, and now you're learning from how this body adapts, and it goes to the universal knowledge that innate is accumulating over time.
It has been continuous since the existence of the first vertebrate. And you remember, he feels that what we pick up and learn in this life, we carry on through our next level of existence. So all things known and experienced have been experienced within the innate within us. And I have in the Tibetan Book of the Living and Death is by Rinpoche, was the writer. He was a Tibetan Buddhist, and he talks about, we have lived enough lives to have been each other's mother. And I thought about that when I read this immediately. This spirit has gone through all time that has beyond the existence that we can even consciously comprehend. Because does it mean this earth, or evolved? Who knows what vertebrates exist out in all the cosmos?
I've been very observant of paradoxes in my life the last handful of years. And this makes me think of the irony of innate, because innate in our lifetime here on this physical planet is finite, the natural laws. However, innate in this time period, my identity here is actually educating itself in the cosmological level. And it's the irony of innate. It is finite while it's here. However, it is educating itself to be better and more adaptable to whatever's going on, the spirit, the universal thing, to betterness.
Yeah. Anyone else? Next paragraph. Innate is a segment of the all-wise. Educated is an offspring of innate, a servant for its lifetime only. Educated continues with and lasts as long as life exists. Innate is eternal, always was, and always will be. That's a great statement right there. That is a great statement. Innate is everlasting, part of the all-wise. We're connected to God. It's that one spirit that animates the material. Without it, it's just dust. We're fragmented. Functions performed either in excess. You got something, Barry? Go ahead.
There's another irony. Innate is eternal, right? However, the irony is we think of innate as only internal.
You're sharing. Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing. Somebody's hijacking us. Stop sharing. We're going to pause the, I'm getting faster. Okay. So give
I
me
love
that
that
paradox
phrase,
again.
innate is eternal. Innate is eternal, always was, always will be. And us chiropractors, we're always taught, and I preach this every day. Well, not preach it, but say it. Innate is that internal wisdom. However, we know, listening and reading Dee here, it is actually eternal, forever, adapting, moving on.
Absolutely. Functions performed in either in excess or insufficiently are pathological. Pathologically considered, drugs are disease producers. They increase or decrease an action of functions, and by abnormal muscular tension, draw vertebra in or out of alignment. I'm going to stop there for a moment, because we just had this conversation the other day with this group, or we're always talking chiropractic, right? But about the subluxation being mostly endogenous. They're coming from within. And I've heard it quoted over and over again, 80%. I'd really like to find that study if anybody has seen it. And I'd really like to know that. But they come from within. 20% or less come from getting hit by a bus, falling down at the gym, or whatever it might be, comes from the external. But we've been programmed more and more that the subluxation's happening to us instead of coming from us. You see the difference in that? Tremendously. Like I didn't catch cancer. I cancel. I don't have cancer, but one doesn't catch cancer. It's coming from within the body. Same thing with disease. That is from us. It's not to us, right? So that's an important statement right there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, theoretically, innate, we have the ability, if we're functioning well, to resist disease. That's part of what our innate knowledge does. That's what
That's
our
right.
immune system is about. We should be, when we're functioning to the best of our ability, we should be able to resist most things that we get exposed to. That doesn't mean everything, because they're adapting too, because they're always looking for a new home. The innate in them is trying to make them adaptable to find a new place to live, right?
Yeah.
So, and our bodies are constantly trying to adapt to those things that we get exposed to, but innate and within us allows us to adapt, and so we should be able to adapt to most things. But when it overcomes that, or we are not, or we're subluxated and not functioning as well as we could, that's when we express more symptoms and more disease.
Well, and the symptoms are trying to cure it, but just like any, if you've ever gardened in your life,
He comes to that later. He talks about symptoms later and how that works.
Yeah. Well, you get your plants stronger. They resist disease. They resist invaders, and they become stronger. You get your plant stronger. We've just been brainwashed. We have been taught something else from what my father called the idiot box, that you are insufficient. You can't heal yourself. You're weak. You're nothing. You don't have an innate intelligence. And it's our job to tell people you're powerful. You're strong. You have the ability to heal yourself. You have the power God created in you to animate you on this earth. How can you not get through rhinovirus? That's the big thing. My child has rhinovirus. It's a cold. You're going to get through it. Okay. The more you mess around with it, the longer it stays, because you won't be able to express your symptoms. I don't know if you guys have noticed that everybody says, oh, it's rhinovirus. It's a freaking cold. Okay. You're going to get over it. Don't worry.
I had one last week.
That's it.
Takes 10 days and you're done.
They're given for the purpose of increasing or decreasing nerve vibration. I like that. He didn't say nerve tension. Oh, well, vibration would shift it with nerve tension. Okay. If they do not excite or allay nerves, nerve action, they are considered useless. innate desires to run functions normally, both in manner and amount. Educated has been taught that inflammation and fever create physiological phenomena, that they serve a physiological purpose, that they are reactionary and reparative. On this mode of reasoning, it is supposed that the escape of pus, edematous swellings, granulated tissue, and the abscesses of phagocytic. What is it? Phagocytic reactions on the part of the organism to free itself from irritations. A struggle between phagocytic and the irritating. Did I say it properly?
Phagocytes.
Excuse me. Phagocytes and the irritating agent, that the disturbances of hyperemia, characterized by pain, heat, swelling, discoloration, and distorted functions, are reactionary and beneficial. Yet it is known that the croton oil, calomel, and turpentine will cause suppuration. These drugs, when externally applied, are rubefacents. Gosh, what is that? Rubefacents.
Make things red and hot.
Okay. Produces redness of the skin and diversion of the red and white corpuscles, leaving the red and expelling the white in the substance known as pus. Hyperthermia increases the red corpuscles and diminishes the white. Normal temperature produces an equilibrium of corpuscles. Each kind is normal proportion. That was a mouthful.
Read the next sentence.
I will, but I paused there on purpose because that's an important one, right? The next sentence is, thus, innate would run functions physiologically, while educated with a perverted mind would make them pathological. So he said it would. Can it circumvent innate intelligence? The question of the day.
Well, it can't circumvent it, but what it does is it educated is what you think.
If you're constantly stinking thinking, I'm always sick. I know a lot of people like that.
Innate learns that these symptoms are present, and we think that they're bad. We get taught that the symptoms are the problem. The symptoms are not the problem. The symptoms are the body's ability is trying to adapt to something that's going on. You get an infection and it can live in a narrowed range of temperatures. You know, the virus lives near your normal temperature. If you run a fever of 102 and it lives in a 99 degree range, it's going to start killing off the infection, and that's what the body does. So but educated says I got to drop the temperature because it's too high. It's not normal, and so we're saying, you got to let the body do what it knows what to do, and not fall in the trap of listening to what an educated is saying to you and saying, I got to stop this stuff all the time.
Get rid of the fever. Right. It's part of the healing.
You have to, and for us, we've learned that we have to find that appropriate balance and know when it becomes too big a problem to just say, I need to step in and try and help a little bit here from the outside in, or whether we need to just let it go.
Well, like he's saying, is that you have to let the body adapt. Because at this time, there are apothecaries everywhere. There are people making poultices of everything for thousands of years already. You have a fever, let's treat the fever, right? Instead of let the body do its magic, just like you just said, Alan. We have a paper we give people on, new parents. I put it in my new mommy packet, and about fever. A spike in the fever, 102, 103. That the bacteria doesn't replicate. Longer term fever is virus. It takes longer for it to keep, but it keeps it from replicating and reproducing. So there is an absolute reason we need the fever. It's important. Just like everything else, the pus coming out, understanding what is happening, the infections coming out of the body.
There
Okay,
was
interesting stuff.
when I was in school still at Sherman, I got really at some point I got some infection, and I was on the verge of delirium, and I managed to drive over to Graham Dobson's house, his apartment, because he was a teacher at the school at the time. Some of you know Graham, and I got him, and he adjusted me, and my fever. And by the time I got home, no, overnight the fever got even higher, but by morning it had dropped. It was gone. Because my sister called me in the morning and she says, to say, "How are you doing?" She called me from Baltimore and she says, "What, are you okay?" And I went, "Well, yeah, I'm good." And she says, "I called you last night and you were delirious, and I was getting ready to drive down to make sure, because I was in South Carolina, so I was going to drive down and see what was going on because you were so delirious that you couldn't talk, and I didn't understand a word you were saying." And by morning, when she called me again, I was fine. I went to get adjusted, and my body rebalanced itself, took care of what was going on, and that was the way it worked. And that's what we're talking about here. I knew enough at that time, even as a student. I said, I'm going to go get adjusted, make sure that I'm clear, let my body do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And it did. The fever went up. I got a little crazy overnight. I woke up in the morning and I was fine.
Instead of seing that
But
crazy
you got to
time,
trust it. You got to trust it sometimes. And that's hard sometimes.
oh my gosh,
You
that's
gotta
the
know what
hardest
the limits
part.
are.
My son, we had every time we were going to fly to Brazil to see my wife's parents, one of our children had like a tremendous fever. Every time we had to cancel for like 4 years in a row. And one time Malcolm, he was about 3, maybe 2, and his fever, it went all the way up. It was 106 point something. Whoa.
Yeah.
Scary, right?
Yeah.
And then he got really stiff. And I adjusted him. Roberta came downstairs. It was probably 4 o'clock in the morning. I was getting a glass of water, and she said he's stiff. And I remember the whole suboccipital area, everything was hard as a rock. And I adjusted his atlas, really his occiput on both sides, like an adult. I mean, you could hear that. It was so tight. His body went from relaxed, just like that. I mean, it was incredible. And, we've been up with this kid for, all night long. We're worn out. And, finally fall asleep probably 6 o'clock in the morning for a few minutes. He pops up like, "Hey, what's going on? Where's everybody?" Trying to wake us up like nothing had happened whatsoever in the morning, But I tell parents like this, I don't always tell that story because, listen, we're monitoring them continually. I have a lot more experience than you do. This is the world I work in. If you feel uncomfortable, you go to urgent care or what have you, where you feel comfortable with this. And, that's where I felt comfortable. If it went any higher, there was a time he was hallucinating a little bit. And, he's a healthy, happy boy now at 8 years old. But, that trust, that's a hard one. That's where we really get tested. That's where we get tested the most.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we're kind of at a spot to stop for next week. All right. Or would you like to let's read this paragraph. And because we're getting a little bit later on here, Al, would you mind reading that paragraph?
No problem. So we're on 497 in Dee Dee's 1910. In mythology, Somnus was the god of sleep, the son of night, a twin brother of death. Innate never sleeps, but makes favorable conditions for periodical rests for educated. As far as possible, all sense irritation is removed. The circulation of the cerebrum is lessened. A portion of the bloodstream is shunted to the skin and abdominal viscera, thereby lessening the physiological functioning of the upper and front portion of the brain. The eyelids are closed, the eyeball turned upwards so that the pupil is under the upper lid. The aperture for the rays of light is diminished in size. The ear is protected against the reception of sounds by increased tension of the tympanic membrane. The mucous membranes of the nose and mouth are drier because of diminished secretion, thereby lessening their sensibility to odors and soluble bodies. The skin is made less sensitive to pressure. The pulse is slower, respiratory movements are fewer, the voluntary muscles are relaxed, and the psychic nerve activities are wholly at rest. These conditions give educated an opportunity for repose, during which potential nerve energy may be recuperated. As the period of sleep termination approaches, the mental conditions return, and the waking state is reestablished. During sleep, the cerebral hemispheres are at rest. Also, the functions dependent thereon. The deeper the sleep, the less there will be of psychic activity and voluntary movements. The cerebral hemispheres are the seat of all psychic activity. Psychic activity, sorry. Through them, energy is transmitted for volition, sensation, and thought. Microcephalic and hyprocephalic heads are deficient in voluntary functions. Physiologic actions are decreased in force and volumes. Many theories have been presented to account for the cause of sleep. Chiropractors add one more: the all-wise provision of innate for the recuperation of the physical. This includes the physic, the psychic, the soul, and the living vital principle, the bond of union between spirit and body.
Let's finish that dreams one, and
You
then
want me to go on to dreams? I think that's an important paragraph right there.
that is a very important paragraph. Let's
Many
stop
theories have
there.
been presented to account for the cause of sleep. Chiropractors add one more: the all-wise provision of innate for the recuperation of the physical. That this includes the psychic, the soul, the living vital principle, the bond of union between spirit and body. And that's an important thought process for us to remember right there.
Absolutely. The rest portion, right?
Yes.
And, BJ was clinically controlled research where he did the experiment. We talked to Simon Senzen when he was on here about the sleep studies with BJ, and even the head facing north, and got better sleep when all the ways that they measured that. Because if we're talking about a third of our life in reality, how are we sleeping, and how important it is, and having a clear functioning nerve system. When it's unclear is when we're really the most restless and probably not resting, right?
Sid at meetings, Sid would turn his bed in the hotel room so it faced that direction.
I tell you this, I want to turn my bed so badly. I have nowhere in my bedroom. It would be blocking the closet. It's my wife's closet. She doesn't need to go in there, right? But
you don't
I
want to
need
block
to
your
turn my
wife's
bed.
closet. You don't want to do that.
Don't do it. Oh, no. Right. Exactly. Plus her birthday is tomorrow. Don't do it today anyway. But I've heard that. I forgot about that story about Dr. Sid. I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Mine are always north. That's universal principle, north of the equator. Why resist universal forces? And especially while you sleep. Maybe a different bedroom and or a bigger closet. Sleep in the closet, make the bedroom her closet.
I'm ready to build a master suite. Our house is built in 1968, man. They didn't think about master suites in 1968. But I love it anyway. I really love my house. But the bedroom, I need to be able to put my bed facing north. Head north, right?
Head north.
Well, I'm glad I'm not heading north right now, because all y'all are cold up there. It hits about 65 degrees here, and I'm saying it's really cold in Florida. You guys had some winter happening, haven't you? All of you probably, right? From the Midwest all the way through.
They had snow in Atlanta.
It snowed in Atlanta. It snowed when I was in school there a few times.
There was a snowstorm when I was in Atlanta one time, and only once, I think, when I was in Atlanta. I started at Sherman. I graduated from Life.
Yeah.
The uh, and I remember I was over at Eddie Cohen's house that night, and it was snowing, and I said, "I'm going home. You know, I'm from up north. I'm driving to this. I don't give a shit." The but and there was a slight hill, and people were stuck on this in the snow, and they spun their tire. They were spinning their tires till they burst.
Really? Oh
I
my
mean, it
God.
sounded like gunshots going off. I stopped my car. I left it on the side of the road. I'm walking up to people's cars and going, "Put your tires straight. Pretend you have an egg under your gas on the gas pedal under your foot, and just gently touch it." And they start to just go moving just slowly up the hill. I go, "Don't turn your tires."
Small
And they'd be like, "Oh
sequential
my God, I can't
steps.
believe it." They had no experience with snow. It was just the most amazing thing. And it was,
Well, they closed down the school. A little sprinkle, they closed down the school. The kids are happy.
there you go.
Well, I've got to have a few shameless plugs. February 1st, Sherman College of Chiropractic, INNATE Newborn Adjusting that we can use with everyone, is going to be at February 1st, Sherman College, 8 CEs for it. We're also premiering one of our stars, Dr. Nancy Tarlow, was in that, Save the Babies. And that's our documentary with Brian Hooker, Zen Honeycutt, Nancy Tarlow, Haig John, and we're making an impact. So we're premiering a portion of the movie at this event as well. And hopefully we can have Nancy come in and share for a few at that on February 1st. 8 CEs for that. I'm excited. I'm also plugging Peter Morgan's event in Cuba. I'm speaking at this one in Cuba, Valentine's weekend. I've always wanted to go to Cuba. If there's an opportunity to go, we're going. So that's going to be really exciting Valentine's weekend. And I'm plugging my new podcast, which is not new. It's an old podcast. The last guest I had on there was Arno Bernier. And after having Arno, it was like mic drop. I was done for a while. And so we are starting it back with Simon Senzon. He was my guest today. We'll have that ready to post very, very soon. And we broke it down, man. He's working on some really cool stuff in chiropractic. So I can't wait to share that one. I'll probably have it up by the end of the week. Okay. Tuesday, same time, same link. We're here. Okay. Have a gorgeous day. I love you guys. God bless you and good night. Bye, guys.
Thank you all.